Born in Ithaca, New York on May 29, 1892, Basil Elmer was the eldest son of Herbert Charles and Bertha Edson Beebe Elmer. Herbert was a professor of Greek and Latin and dean of the Cornell University Classical Department. Basil attended Cornell University, graduating in 1916. While at Cornell, Basil was a member of the University Corps of Cadets. Shortly after the United States entered the World War on April 6, 1917, Elmer joined the New York National Guard as lieutenant. He was assigned to the 69th Infantry Regiment, the Fighting Irish, of Civil War fame. The 69th Infantry was selected as New York's contribution to the newly created 42nd Division, which was comprised of National Guardsmen from 26 states and the District of Columbia. In late August, the 69th departed their Lexington Avenue Armory to join the rest of the division at Camp Meals near Hempstead, Long Island.
But I must run. I am writing this beforehand, just as an au revoir letter to you, to be used when the time comes. My love for you two will carry me anywhere and safely. I know that you love me devotedly, and I return it twofold to you both. Please be glad and happy for me in this great adventure. The whole thing is so teeming with excitement and interest and romance that occasionally I thrill at the thought of it and long to get at it. It is a wonderful game. Be joyful with me and be glad I am in it. You will go in spirit with me wherever I go. And when I come back, we can talk it all over. Won't that be a lovely visit? And how good it will be to get home again.
The 165th Infantry Regiment included numerous men who would become famous during the war, including Major William Donovan of Buffalo, the regiment's chaplain, Father Francis Duffy, and the acclaimed poet, Joyce Kilmer. All three became close comrades of Basil Elmer, Donovan as a heroic leader, Duffy as a mentor, and Kilmer as a trusted aide. On the night of October 29th, the newly federalized 165th Infantry Regiment departed Camp Mills for New York Harbor. Basil Elmer and 1st Battalion boarded the British transport SS Tunisian, while the remainder of the regiment boarded the USS America and other smaller ships for the journey across the Atlantic.
I can tell you nothing either of where I am or where we are going or when we leave from port. The secrecy makes it all the more interesting. One thing, don't expect to hear from me for 2 months at least. When, if the censor and the boat for mail allow, you may expect a letter. But if none comes from me, don't be worried. If possible, I shall get a letter to you before then. But in any case, you must realize that conditions are unusual and that unusual mail facilities are the result. This note will be mailed in the boat, censored, as I understand it, and then, after we land, abroad, will be mailed.
The 165th Infantry Regiment landed at Brest, France on November 12, 1917. The following day, Elmer and the men aboard the Tunisian arrived in England before being sent to France. The regiment boarded trains for camps near Nancy, France. The rail cars were infamously marked 40 hommes, 8 chevaux, 40 men, 8 horses. The journey lasted nearly 3 days. Once each day, the men were permitted to get out for 15 minutes of exercise. The regiment remained at Valcours through Christmas Day.
We have such a lot of work to do in preparation for the trenches that, as it looks now, it's an almost endless job, and it's hard to tell where we should begin. The men know nothing of modern trench warfare. Christmas time is the time to be at home, and another year will see it so. To be frank, I am a bit homesick. This is the first time I've been the least bit so since I left, although I have missed you all considerably. We move from here tomorrow at the rate of about 15 miles a day or less. We officers carry nothing in these marches except pistols, but the men have to carry their heavy backpacks, and for them, I fear, it will be hard in the snow.
On December 26th, the 165th embarked on a 4-day, 80-mile hike through the foothills of the Vosges Mountains to the village of Langres. We had hiked 17 miles that stormy day, the third of a 4 days journey. The snow was piled high on our packs. Our rifles were crusted with ice. The leather of our hobnailed boots was frozen stiff over our lamed feet. After completing its training, the 165th Infantry entered the trenches in the quiet Luneville sector near the village of Baccarat.
At last, I am able to write to you of my realization of the hope to get to the front. That was my red letter day. Of course, I can't tell you where I am at the front, but I am there and enjoying it to the very extreme limit. We are used to the shells and now feel quite at home. We are living in dugouts, and my idea of a dugout is quite changed. We are some 40-odd feet underground. I am writing this in the room of the dugout. Of course, it is dark night and day, but we have plenty of oil lamps. The dugout is a spacious affair with some 20-odd large rooms. They are well ventilated. Each room has a stove, desks, bed, chairs, floors, ceilings, shelves, washstands, hooks for clothes, etc. Each room opens out on a main hall. We are not crowded in any way. Our meals are excellent. At table is the colonel, a major, Father Duffy, the chaplain, and 4 lieutenants.
On March 3rd, the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk was signed between the German government and the Bolsheviks, who had seized control in Russia. The peace on the Eastern Front freed thousands of German troops to be used against the Allies in France, with the hope of winning the war before more American soldiers could arrive. On March 21st, Operation Michael began, striking at the point where the British and French armies came together. After 3 days, the Germans had forced a 50-mile-wide gap in the Allied lines. As the 165th entered the line, Lieutenant Elmer was named to command the regiment's intelligence section and instructed to recruit men from various companies. Included among these men was Joyce Kilmer.
My men are fine. My new work gives me selected men, men chosen for their intellect, the best men in the regiment. My regret is that I only have 8 in all.
On March 7th, 1918, the German army launched an artillery bombardment of the regiment's trenches. An enemy shell struck a dugout occupied by 22 soldiers of the regiment. 2 men were rescued, but 5 were killed immediately. The remainder could be heard buried inside the dugout. Continued enemy fire prevented their comrades from reaching them. In total, 21 members of the regiment would lose their lives at Rouge Bouquet. In their memory, Sergeant Joyce Kilmer penned Rouge Bouquet. The poem, which was published in Scribner's magazine in September 1918, was transcribed in a June 14th letter by Kilmer's commanding officer, Basil Elmer.
The poem, which is coming out shortly in Scribner's, was written by the same man, and here it is. It is about an incident of which I shall tell you when I see you. I was there and know about it. In the woods they call the Rouge Bouquet, there is a new-made grave today, built by never a spade or pick, but covered with earth 10 meters thick. There lie many fighting men, dead in their youthful prime, never to love or sing again or taste the summertime. For death came flying through the air and stopped his flight on the dugout stair, touched his prey, and then left them there, clay to clay. He covered their bodies stealthily with the soil of the land they sought to free, and fled away. Now over their graves, abrupt and clear, 3 volleys ring, and perhaps their brave young spirits hear. The bugles sing, go to sleep, go to sleep. Slumber well where the shell screamed and fell. Let your rifles lie on the muddy floor. You will not need them anymore. Danger's past. Now at last, go to sleep. There is on earth no nobler grave to hold the bodies of the brave than this place of blood and pride, where they nobly fought and nobly died. Never fear, but in the skies saints and angels stand, smiling with their holy eyes on this new-come band. St. Michael's sword flies through the air and touches the areola in his hair, and sees them stand, saluting there, his stalwart sons. And Patrick, Bridget, Columkill, rejoice in veins of warriors still. The Gael's blood runs and up to the door of heaven floats, from the woods called Rouge Bouquet, a delicate cloud of bugle notes that seem to say, farewell, farewell, comrades true, born anew, peace to you. Your souls shall dwell where the heroes are, and your memories shine like the morning star. Brave and clear, guard us here, farewell.
Just days after the first loss of soldiers in combat, Father Duffy utilized the most Irish of holidays to bolster the sagging spirits of his soldiers. After holding Mass, the regimental band played a concert featuring Gary Owen, Let Erin Remember, and other Irish favorites. While the regiment's Irish heritage had dropped from 85% during the Civil War to 75% on the eve of World War I, and to only 50% when it sailed for France, Father Duffy described his men as Irish by adoption, Irish by association, or Irish by conviction. On the night of March 20th, the men of the 165th Infantry embarked on their first raid across no man's land. In retaliation, the Germans bombarded the Americans with poison gas. In 3 hours, 400 mustard gas shells and 7,000 explosive rounds struck the men of the 3rd Battalion. The men of the 42nd Division had received little training in gas warfare. By the following day, the Americans had suffered more than 400 casualties. The division was withdrawn from the trenches at Luneville and sent to the quiet sector at Baccarat. By May, a renewed German offensive threatened Paris.
I watched a barrage, my first. It was nothing short of wonderful. The impression it made upon me, I shall never forget. Everything in the world was mixed up, and yet as we stood there, actually under the shells, everything seemed clear and quiet with us. Then again, as we looked up from where we were, the sky and earth seemed just one conglomerate mass of fire again.
Trying to calm his parents' fears, Basil Elmer wrote on April 9th.
The basketball game between Yale and Cornell was, I know positively, much more exciting than the war is to us. You see, when you picture the war, the dugouts, the tunnels, etc., you think of shells bursting 3 feet to one side and then 2 feet to the other. And then you think that it's constantly boom, booming. Tain't so. That's all. Tain't so. For hours at a time, we never hear or see a thing. April 22nd, 1918. Tomorrow night, I go on my first real patrol to no man's land, between the wires.
In a letter dated May 7th, Basil enclosed a slip of paper, which value highly, a receipt dated May 5th, that he received for the capture of 3 German prisoners during a raid into no man's land. Also included was a newspaper account of the event. While the regiment was stationed in the Luneville sector, Lieutenant Elmer and his intelligence section were dispatched to the nearby hills overlooking the trenches. The lookout post was a wooden platform constructed in a grove of pines from which the men could observe Germans in the distance through long-range telescopes.
This little city reminds me so much of Ithaca. It is in a valley with the hills on either side. I am now sitting in the window of a chateau on one of the hills looking down over the city and beyond the wonderful Vosges Mountains. The river runs through the town, winding. The hills are wooded with pines. It's an ideal summer resort, really. That is here. Where I am going, and where I have been for a week up in the mountains, is even more of a summer vacation place. The nearest thing to the Adirondacks I have ever seen. Why should I, or you either, worry? Everything is quiet. It's peaceful, lazy, and lovely. An occasional rumbling boom of the guns far away in the distance, and otherwise everything is quiet and natural. And then as I turn over and look out over the beautiful plains with the red-roofed villages, and then further on the Vosges, this cannot be war. The world is at peace. The war is but a dream.
By May 27th, the German offensive that had begun in March had driven to within 40 miles of Paris. The exhausted Allies pleaded for American reinforcements. On June 14th, Basil wrote to his parents, including another poem from Joyce Kilmer, The Peacemaker. On June 18th, the soldiers of the 165th Infantry Regiment left the trenches at Baccarat.
My dear parents, Kilmer, one of my sergeants, wrote this sonnet this morning. The Peacemaker. Upon his will he binds a radiant chain. For freedom's sake, he is no longer free. It is his task, the slave of liberty. With his own blood to wash away the stain, that pain may cease, he yields his flesh to pain. To banish war, he must a warrior be. He dwells in night, eternal dawn to see, and gladly dies, abundant life to gain. What matters death, if freedom be not dead? No flags are fair, if freedom's flag be furled. Who fights for freedom goes with joyful tread, to meet the fires of hell against him hurled, and has for captain him whose thorn-wreathed head smiles from the cross upon a conquered world.
As the 42nd and other U.S. divisions were moved to check the German offensive, the realities of war began to set in on the men of the 165th Infantry Regiment.
Ollie Ames received a cablegram last night telling him that he had a fine daughter born July 3rd. Now, naturally, he is worrying.
The 42nd Division was attached to the French Fourth Army between Reims and the Argonne Forest. The Allies learned of a new German attack scheduled to begin on July 15th, 1918.
There is an air of expectancy tonight. Why or what it is, I cannot say. But there is a bit of a thrill in the atmosphere. I cannot tell of anything that I would like to, but there is much going on of interest. That is all I can tell for now.
The untested men of the 165th faced a tremendous enemy bombardment and a ferocious assault by veteran German infantry. After 3 days of fighting, the Germans were forced to call off their offensive. 60 members of the regiment were killed during the Second Battle of the Marne. 3 days after the fighting on the Marne, the 165th Infantry joined the rest of the division in its first offensive operations of the war. By August 6th, the Allies had reduced the Marne salient and eliminated the threat to the French capital. During the offensive, more than 250 members of the regiment were killed. Nearly 1,200 had been wounded, and 150 were missing.
What a fine time I've had, and how far back I must go to tell you what I've been through and what brave deeds I've seen performed. Most of it is indescribable, but the Germans are on the run, and we are out of the fight. I am now a captain, and in command of Company I, with only 50 men left, and myself the only officer. We were sent to make contact with the enemy. It was here that I fired my first shot of the war. We are few in number, but those of us who are gone have done credit to those that remain. Ali, who, as you know, had a daughter born about 3 weeks ago, surely has left that daughter a wonderful memory. He died advancing against the foe. He didn't fall until he had reached the objective, the line that held. He was a brave man, and as the cross on his grave says, a kindly gentleman and a true soldier. He and Joyce Kilmer are buried side by side at the edge of a pretty wood near a brook. I am writing his wife today, enclosing his personal things. I miss Ollie Ames ever more than I imagined I would. I have things that he had in his pocket when he was killed. Among his things were many pictures of his wife, a cable telling of the birth of his daughter, and a wristwatch, which his wife gave to him, and many other things. I'm going to send them all to his wife. I often think about our talks together. When his daughter was born, he told only me of it because he said he felt that to tell people would make it all the less sacred. I congratulated him, and he said that it didn't make him happier, but made him love Caroline more. He is buried 1 mile due north of Villers-sur-Frère. The day before he died, during an advance, he got up as the men were starting. Forward under bombardment, he said, "Come on, men, keep cool. We aren't going to lose a man." But we did. He was a man and a soldier and my best friend, and he has done the noblest thing that any man can do.
Following the offensive, Captain Basil Elmer was reassigned to the Division Intelligence Section at headquarters. While he appreciated the promotion, his new duties caused him pain.
And my conscience hurts me. I am now on the staff of Major General Minowar, an intelligence officer, really the best possible of jobs. And so many of my good friends who are in the line are buried. It doesn't seem right. I ought to be dead, but I am alive, and now I can't even get wounded again where I am.
After being withdrawn from the lines for rest and refitting, the 165th was brought back to combat strength in time for the San Miguel offensive, the first offensive of the war carried out by an independent American army. On October 14th, the 42nd jumped off against the vaunted Hindenburg Line near the village of Es-Serment at the fortress Lange et Saint-Georges. Basil Elmer continued serving as an intelligence officer throughout the offensives, though no correspondence exists for this period. Finally, on October 17th, the Americans broke through the Hindenburg Line near Montfaucon. The 42nd Division was assigned to I Corps and pursued the enemy towards Sedan. On November 7th, the 165th assaulted and captured Hills 252 and 246, taking numerous German prisoners. The following morning, the regiment was withdrawn from the line. At 11 o'clock a.m. on November 11th, 1918, an armistice ended fighting on the Western Front. The 165th Infantry Regiment was ordered to Remagen, Germany, for occupation duty. The regiment had spent 164 days in combat. 844 soldiers of the regiment were killed. In early April, the 165th Infantry, with Basil Beebe Elmer, finally sailed for New York Harbor and home.
March 15th, 1919. My dear parents, tomorrow we are to be relieved by Pershing. Monday, I go to Koblenz by auto, hence by train to Paris. I was in Cologne again yesterday, and I am sending you today additional pictures of it. I will be in Paris only a few days and will be back here again by the 25th of March. There is no news except that we are all excited about going home. Love untold, B.
On April 21st, 1919, the 165th Infantry Regiment joined the 42nd Division in a victory parade up Fifth Avenue in New York City and through the Victory Arch constructed at Madison Square. Basil Beebe Elmer returned to New York with the 42nd Division. After the war, Elmer pursued a career in banking and finance in New York City. He married Alice Haight in April 1920 and had 2 children, Alice Hoyt Elmer and Basil Beebe Elmer, Jr. The family settled in Bronxville, Westchester County. Basil Elmer died on February 23rd, 1962. That concludes our reading.